Kenny Burrell once said that you should be listening to as much jazz as you are practicing. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 essential jazz guitar albums. Hey everybody, this is Jamie Holroyd helping you learn jazz guitar. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm sharing with you my top recommendations for jazz guitar albums. If you are new to the genre and you want to learn about jazz guitar, then these albums are the absolute best resources that I recommend going to check out. We're doing these in chronological order, meaning that the first album on the list is the oldest, and then I'm working my way to the newest, so they don't reflect like a countdown of what I think is the best and the worst. They just start from the oldest and go to the newest. So let's get into them. The first album on this list is Midnight Blue by Kenny Burrell. Recorded in 1963, Midnight Blue is probably Kenny Burrell's most famous piece of recorded work. This album is a must to listen to if you come from a blues background, because Kenny Burrell's playing is very blues influenced. So on this album, which mostly consists of Kenny Burrell's original compositions, you're going to hear plenty of amazing blues playing as well as bebop jazz guitar playing. So it really bridges the gap between the two genres. In fact, it's probably too jazzy for a lot of pure blues players, and maybe even too bluesy for some jazz players. But if you're like me and you come from a blues background, this album is a must, and I can't recommend it highly enough. If you are from a blues background, then you'll probably recognise Chitlin's Con Carne, as Stevie Ray Vaughan actually covered this on his Gone Home record. Two of the tunes that I like to play and work through with my students are Chitlin's Con Carne, as that is just a free chord blues, and Midnight Blue. Midnight Blue is a great tune because it has basically a diatonic chord vamp in the A section, then it goes into some 2/5s in the bridge. So it's a really great way of going from blues playing then going into bebop guitar playing as well. So I really recommend checking those two out if you're looking to get hands-on with this album. The next album on the list is Smokin at the Half Note, recorded by Wes Montgomery. This album was recorded in 1965 and features Wes Montgomery with Wynton Kelly's piano trio. So from the get-go here, you've got one of the most iconic jazz guitar players of all time, Wes Montgomery, recording with one of the best piano trios of all time, Wynton Kelly's piano trio. Wynton Kelly's piano trio featured obviously Wynton Kelly on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, and I think it was Jimmy Cobb on drums. So if you put those three with Wes and you put that into a live recording, where naturally on live recordings jazz musicians want to stretch out more, take longer solos, you've got a recipe for a good album. Smokin at the Half Note has a good mix of jazz standards and Wes's original music. You've got a few classic jazz standards on there like What's New, Missed It and Impressions, as well as Wes's original music such as 4 on 6. The arrangement on 4 on 6 is completely different to how Wes recorded it on his earlier album, The Incredible Jazz Guitar. The part with the descending chords has all changed. Rather than play a single line melody, Wes now plays stab chords instead of the original melody there, and the tempo is much quicker, and yeah, it's got a completely different feel. So I really recommend checking that track out from the Smokin at the Half Note record. The next album on the list is Bright Size Life by Pat Metheny. We've jumped forward around 10 years here to the year 1975, and we can really hear jazz guitar starting to evolve at this point. We've got Pat Metheny here on the guitar, Jaco Pastorius on electric bass, and Bob Moses on the drums. And when I first heard this record, I listened to it and I enjoyed it, and I thought that Pat Metheny must have been probably at least 30 years old. After listening to the record, I found out that Pat was only 21 when he recorded this landmark jazz guitar album, and I was seriously ready just to hang my guitar up and call it quits. How could anyone at such a young age record such fantastic music? If you haven't checked out this album, then for that reason alone you should check it out, because Pat Metheny's signature guitar style, his legato, his hammer-ons are all evident in this early recording that he did with Jaco and Bob Moses. The album features all Pat's original music, so there's no jazz standards here, but this is one album which I think if you listen to it and you didn't know that it was recorded in 1975, it still sounds relevant and fresh today. So I think it's one that's really held up well, and I can't recommend this one highly enough. Bright Size Life by Pat Metheny. The next album on the list is by Jim Hall and it's also from 1975. It's a live record called Live 75. This album for me really demonstrates modern jazz guitar, and as far as I know, this and perhaps Bright Size Life are the first two examples of what we now think of as modern jazz guitar. Before this, jazz guitar was played completely different. You could take a guitar trio like Barney Cassell's amazing jazz guitar trio from the 1950s and 60s with Ray Brown and Shelly Manne, and that was fantastic in its own way and completely revolutionary for the time, as was this Jim Hall record as well. What really separates this for me is the interplay between all the different musicians. Jim Hall's improvisational style is really unique in that it's extremely compositional based and he plays off motifs, and the way in which the drums accompany what Jim Hall plays is completely different from what you had heard in jazz guitar albums before this time. There's parts of this album which almost sound free, but Jim's always got the harmony in mind and he's completely got the jazz tradition underneath his fingers as he's pushing the boundaries of what the jazz guitar trio can be. An example of this is the track Scrapple from the Apple. If you listen to what Jim Hall plays of the improvised B section, it's a direct homage to Charlie Parker. He actually plays Charlie Parker's original solo there, so you can tell that Jim Hall obviously had completely mastered the traditional jazz language and vocabulary. In fact, you could even check out an album by Jim recorded earlier from the 50s which features him playing other standards, and he sounds completely different then to what he does on this record. So Live 75 is an absolute must to listen to for that reason alone. The final album on this list is called Intuit by Kurt Rosenwinkel. This is a much newer album recorded in 1998 and it features Kurt Rosenwinkel playing with a piano trio. This is a great example of modern jazz guitar. To be honest, any of Kurt Rosenwinkel's albums are all fantastic and you can't go wrong listening to any of them, but I purposely chose this one because the album consists of only jazz standards, so you get to hear how a modern jazz guitar player, someone that's still around today, interprets some of the older standards which we've been hearing on the older recordings so far. So that's why I chose Intuit. Each of the albums are linked and listed in the description below, so you can check out those links if you'd like to listen to any of them. What I'd love to know is, what is your favourite jazz guitar album? What have I missed out on this list which is completely essential that everybody else needs to hear? Please leave a comment and let me know. I wanted to make this list very specific, so I just included jazz guitar albums, but it goes without saying, you should go beyond just jazz guitar. The world of jazz is more than just guitar, and of course the most famous recordings are by saxophone players, trumpet players, piano players. So really you don't just want to listen to guitar, you want to listen to Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, Bud Powell, Thelonious Monk, Keith Jarrett. All these guys and musicians are fantastic to listen to as well, and if you would like some broader lists as well as some more specific ones, perhaps I could do lists on things like solo jazz guitar albums, jazz guitar duet albums, then leave a comment below and I'll consider it. Thanks for watching, and of course if you did enjoy this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a like and subscribe to the channel.